Everybody, movie review next door here, and I'm back with another review. And this time I'm reviewing Carter. It's a 2022 action thriller or action sci-fi thriller from 2020 or 2022, directed by Young Byung Gil, and it stars Ju Won, uh, Kim Bo Min, Camila Bell, and Mike Coulter. In this film, Carter, who awakens 2 months into a deadly pandemic originating from the DMZ that has already devastated US and North Korea, he has he who has no recollections of his past finds a mysterious device in his head and a lethal bomb in his mouth. A voice in his ears give him orders give a voice in his ears gives him orders to avoid getting killed, and he's thrown into a mysterious operation while the CIA and North Korean coup chase him close. That was weirdly put. But what did I think of Carter? Well, let me adjust the camera a little bit. I didn't mind it, but without the kind of frantic pace, the pretty imaginative action sequences, and the interesting style of shooting it, this would legitimately be probably a 5. Because there's not much here otherwise, really. Let me get to the actors. Ju-won as Carter Lee. He's kind of an assassin, I guess. Supposed to be. He has this virus, I guess. They're not very clear on anything in this film. But he did a good job acting for the most part, and the action scenes, again, are some of the best parts of this movie. Um, Kim Bo Min as Hana, she's a girl that Carter is sent to protect in order to return back to his family. She was fine. Camila Bell plays Agnes, um, who I guess, again, they don't really make this very clear. I guess she's supposed to be like an old girlfriend of Carter's or something, but she's in only 2 scenes. She's not amazing in this film, even though I usually don't mind her. And Mike Coulter as Smith, he does a pretty decent job for his 1 scene in the film. I do wish he was in it more. But this is a film that has very up and down reviews. There are a lot of people who say, oh, this is barely even a movie. I wouldn't go that far. I'd say this film it tries to do something new, and I will give it that. It does have kind of a video gamey feel to it, the camera angles and how it's shot, and I'll explain exactly what this film does. This is one of those films that tries to be like, oh, it looks like we shot it on one take, but in reality, they didn't. And it's a bunch of takes stitched together. And I will say that fails more often than it succeeds, because a lot of the cuts I did notice, and a lot of them were not very well hidden. And I actually have movies here that I'd like to talk about that do certain things with the action and the camera work and all that I found much more commendable and impressive than this film. First off, I'd like to say Bushwick does what this film tried to do a lot better. I never noticed any of the cuts. There's a small, tiny bit at the end where they cut away to footage of like planes flying, and then it cuts back, and then it's all in one take again, or all in the stitched together take. But this film does that a lot better. The action is a lot less messy, and I'll get to what I mean by messy, and I just love this film a lot more. Children of Men, one of my favorite films. The action sequences are actually all done in one take. There was no stitching together because this film came out in what year did this come out? 2006. And I love this film to death. The action sequences are breathtaking in this, and the fact that they did them all in one take for real, especially that ending bit, with the war and everything, is mind blowing to me. Uh, Dragged Across Concrete doesn't do anything really with the editing, but I found the ending very impressive with how it was this big, long, like 40 or 45-minute long shootout that plays almost in real time. And it is very impressive at the end. Vantage Point. No real time stuff, but this film tries to do a eight different perspectives on one event thing, an act of terrorism. And I think this is a very underrated film. If you love action films and you want something underrated, watch this. Hardcore Henry. This film does feel a lot like it's trying to mimic the frantic action pace and everything of Hardcore Henry. Hardcore Henry only cost $2 million to make, and I'm guessing partly because it was filmed in Russia. But I think the stunts are a lot more impressive here because it feels like somewhat realistic. And most of the times the stunts happen in this film, they feel very like messy and very poorly green screened. And Gemini Man. Nothing specifically with how the action is done, but the way that they utilize the high frame rate. And if you have the 4K Blu ray, there's a special feature where you can watch the film in 60 frames and you can also see the behind the scenes in 60 frames, which is really cool. But yeah, I actually do like this film. These films here, I would rather watch any of these films over uh over Carter. And again, that's not to say that Carter doesn't have any good things to it. There are some pretty interesting action scenes. I'd say one of the better ones is the one in the bathhouse, even though there are some really weird choices with the camera work. Because there's one bit where the camera, like, when Carter is about to exit out of the bathhouse, the camera, like, turns around and goes towards this naked woman that's shooting at him, and she shoots, like, some of her own men, and it's like, why? They never explain who this woman is because she gets this big entrance, this like 30-second long entrance where she's like bending around and still pointing the gun at him and all this. It kind of feels like this film is trying to do a random thing, kind of like Crank. Crank did that kind of thing where you'd have random shit happen, and it, it's really hard to describe. You kind of have to see the film. I'll try to upload a clip of what I mean later, but if you saw a film like Hardcore Henry and didn't like how it was shot, I didn't mind it. I liked the new type of thing that it was trying to do. I liked the relentless pace, and I liked that it didn't feel like it was cramming too much into a little bit of time. And with what I think is one of the biggest pitfalls of this film is also one of its strengths, which is the shooting style. Because the camera will, during action sequences, kind of go around and not completely focus on the main character. There's bits where the camera would like circle around the main character or go up to him and then over him, and then it feels like they're doing too much. The main offender of this, the worst looking action scene in the entire film, doesn't even look that bad up until a certain point, but there's a bit with motorcycles, and there's a bit where there's these vans, like three vans driving up next to each other, and the vans don't move forward or back or anything for the most part, and you can very much tell that they're struggling to animate all of this. And because a lot of the action scenes use a lot of either decent to very low quality CGI. And I think that's a big issue is this film bit off way more than it could chew. I can understand the up and down ratings of this film completely. I can understand people absolutely fucking hating this. I don't hate this film. I think that this film has a gimmick that it doesn't capitalize on like it should because it goes too far. If they had a bit of a better budget, if they had a better visual effects team, maybe this could have worked, but I think another issue is the camera work. The camera work isn't terrible for the whole film. It's just that it's like they're trying to do too much of like kind of this feels like if Wes Anderson directed an action film in a way where there's these like snap cuts. One of the things this film reminded me of whenever it kept doing that was this there's a direct-to-video sequel to the Dwayne Johnson remake of Walking Tall called Walking Tall the Payback, which I actually think is pretty decent, and Walking Tall Lone Justice, which I thought was almost unwatchable, specifically due to how it was filmed. There is some alright action in that film. Don't get me wrong. And I think Kevin Sorbo is a good actor. But that opening scene in that film where they kept zooming in and out during the same shot, that looks like shit. And you could tell very much that it was shot on digital and not that good looking digital, and it had a disgusting color palette. I won't say this film's color palette is exactly disgusting, but just again, this film seemed to be doing too much with the camera work, and it's just really hard to describe without showing you. And I don't like putting clips in my reviews because I don't want. Once I do hit 300 subscribers, I'm going to migrate my content over to Odyssey. I'm still going to be posting here, but I wanted to migrate it over in case my stuff gets deleted. Um, but yeah, I think that God, this film is a mess. Now, there are people that I know who really liked this film. Good on you. I'm happy that you really like this film. I'm not gonna shit on you for enjoying it. I'm not that kind of person. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm not the kind of person that will hate on a person for having a or not a bad opinion. Sorry. I'm talking too fast. I'm not the kind of person to hate someone for having a different opinion than me. What I will say is, as long as you're judging the film as a film and not because of, oh, political opinions the director has or whatever, then I think you're good. You're fine. This film, speaking of politics, has a very weird political thing going on because there's one of the most unbelievable things about this film, and yes, I mean unbelievable things other than him, Carter, jumping towards a helicopter and then falling a little bit and still somehow grabbing onto the bottom of the helicopter, is that North Korea and South Korea banded together. Their governments banded together. You see at one point South Korean agents and North Korean soldiers on the same plane banded together to create an antidote to the virus that originated at the ZMZ. That is unrealistic. That would never happen in real life. And the fact that this film even tries to go with some type of political message, I don't even know. Because the main character is supposed to be North Korean or from North Korea. He's trying to get back to North Korea where he lives with his wife and daughter. And he lost his memory and all this. And he's just near the end of the film, he regains his memory. Then well, at the beginning, it seems like, oh, the CIA agent, Camila Bell's character, is like, oh, I'm gonna help you. And then she gets shot. And then well, at the beginning, he's with these North Korean people. And then he's with South Korean people. And then he's with the CIA. And then he's with South Koreans again. And this film does not have a good plot. I don't usually get mad at plots of action films that often, but the plot here is almost impossible to follow because it doesn't really make that much sense. Again, I don't hate this film. I think it's decent because of some of the action and some of the camera work. Some of the camera work is really good. There are some really good shots of the camera like coming up to something and going over, or camera following something, but for the most part, the camera work is pretty crummy. And again, for the most part, it just feels like they didn't know what they wanted to focus on, or I have not seen this director's other film. I do have this director's other film, The Villainess. I'm hoping it's better than this because apparently it's shot like a normal action film. And I think I would have not seen this film if I hadn't heard so many up and down things about it, because all the time I want to give credit to films where they deserve it. I don't want to just say, "Oh, this is a horrible piece of shit, 1 out of 10." That's why I don't give a lot of terrible reviews, because I legitimately think a lot of films are pretty all right and do what they're trying to do. This film just barely does what it's trying to do for me, because I feel like, again, without this gimmick, I'm not sure I would like this film. It really is the epitome of a film that has a gimmick, and it's one of the main things you know about the film. And I know there might be people that disagree with me. That's fine. But the biggest compliment I can give to this film is that it tried to do something different. Again, it does have small bits that are like first person, like Hardcore Henry, but for the most part, it's doing like a, ooh, camera's going everywhere. There's some really noticeable cuts, though. Again, this film, I guess if you blink a lot during the film, you wouldn't notice the cuts. But Jesus Christ, I noticed the cuts. Like, I'm not gonna go throughout the film and like edit a video of like all the cuts, because I'd be here all night. But like, good God, it was rough looking. Again, I can praise this film for being bloody as all hell a lot of the time. Not terrible quality CG blood for the most part. Pretty decent combat and like action sequences for the most part. But again, I can't bring myself to give it more than a 7. But yeah. Again, if you like this film, be my guest. I just can't say much more than decent, and that's due to the way that the film was made. So, um, hope you like my review of Carter. Um, if you've seen the film, let me know what you thought in the comments down below, and movie reviewer next door out.